Hey there, welcome back to the channel. Working on the Dana 44 today. I'm going to convert this from drum brake to disc brake. I'm going to be using a kit from Horsepower Sales. It's something that I paid full price for. It's not a sponsored video. It's about the only kit that I've found for this. This is out of a 1974 Dodge Power Wagon. It evidently fits Ford as well. It's an open knuckle kit, but this is the only conversion kit that I've found available for it. So let's get to it. The first thing we need to do is we need to strip everything all the way down, and in fact we've got to take this spindle off. I've got videos for everything, starting with the lockout hubs all the way down to this point. I'll put some links up here in the corner and down in the description for all of those steps. But I've got to pull this off, and it comes with some shortened disc brake spindles. Do yourself a favor and buy or make some sort of a puller to get that spindle off. Without a tool, it really is not fun. A hammer does not work for all but maybe the easiest. The new spindle came with a new bearing and seal already installed, and then it's got this shim or thrust washer and a bellows type seal that you can reinstall. I've got brand new ones on this, so I'm not going to bother changing those. Here's the old spindle, and here's the new. They are very, very similar, so they're the same depth really there. If I check here, this one's a little deeper. So if you look at it, you'll see that the depth of this and this drum, this is the disc, they're slightly different. But otherwise they look to be the same. Regardless, I've got new ones that came with the kit, so the new ones are going on. The new spindle looks like it has not been greased down here in the bearing, so I'm going to grease this before we assemble it. Also lubricate the faces of these. This is where that seal and thrust washer run, just to make sure that they're not running on dry surface. Alright, and I'm going to slide this on. I do put it with this notch up. I don't know that it really matters. When you assemble it, there's a washer that's got a tab that goes into that, but it could be to the side, down. I don't think it really matters. Next, we install the caliper bracket. If you take a look at the bracket, this kind of humps up here, and these tabs face in that direction. That needs to be away from the differential, so out. This notch where the caliper goes. So the instructions say for an open knuckle, you mount it at 3 o'clock, which would be about like that, except it's not going on because this is hitting the lower part of the knuckle. So I'm going to rotate it one hole this direction, and it goes on just fine. Next up is this piece. I'm not sure what it's called, but we'll put it on. Next, I'll put the spindle nuts on and torque them down. One downside that I'm seeing right now is these are studs. I think in the instructions it's holes that take bolts, but on mine they're studs, and they're shorter now because we have the thickness of this caliper bracket and whatever this plate is. So they're not going to have as much thread coming through them as they had originally. You could probably press those studs out, get some longer ones. I'm going to assemble it a little bit, and we'll make that determination at that point. They're tight, not torqued, but let's take a look at how many threads we've got still on that nut. Yeah, it makes me a little nervous. I'm going to pull one of the studs out and see if I can order some that are the right size. Well, I got a stud out from the other side. Looks like a real pain in the butt because they've got this, piece missing off of it or ground down. But then I was looking at the hardware that came in the kit, and look at this. It comes with a bunch, and the length of them is just right. So the instructions that come with the kit don't say anything about removing the studs and replacing them, but you have to, and it comes with the correct length that you're going to need. So I'm going to take this all back apart, pop all those studs out, and put the new ones back in. Easiest way to remove these studs is to take a nut, run it on so that the end of the nut is flush with the end of the bolt or stud. Just like that. And then persuade it with a hammer. Don't drive it all the way out, otherwise when you try to take the nut off it's just going to spin. Now you can just tap it out. It's probably easiest to do these when you have the axle pulled. So I would recommend pulling this axle out and taking the rest of them out. Once you have all the studs in, make sure that the cutoff part of that head is facing the hole so it's not blocking anything. Then I'm going to go through, use a brass drift from the back side, and drive them all in. Now, put the axle shaft back in, put the caliper bracket back on, and whatever that circle piece is. The studs did come with new nuts as well, but the reality is I like these because they've got a flange on them. So I'm going to reuse the flange nuts. Torque these down to 45 foot-pounds. The kit comes with bearings and seals. We've got inners, outers, and then the seals go on the inside. Obviously, they say inner and outer, but the easy way to tell is the inside diameter is bigger on the inners than it is on the outers. So we'll need one of these, one seal for a rotor. It looks like it says the rotor is a standard Ford half-ton four-wheel drive hub and rotor assembly. The caliper is, I'm fairly certain, a Chevy, probably like mid-80s-ish. I don't know what years, but it looks like a Chevy brake pad as well. You'll see that this is the style of rotor, that the rotor and hub are one piece. We want to start on the back side. We're going to install this inner bearing and then a seal. First thing we need to do is we need to pack this inner bearing with grease. Just using a Mobile One synthetic, but basically you want a wheel bearing, high pressure grease. The general idea here is I'm going to put grease in the palm of my hand and then use my other hand to scrape grease into this crevice here. So we want to go between the cage and this inner bearing race. And we drag like this to force grease up in between the rollers until it comes out up here. And you just force it in and then move it around and go all the way in a circle until you've filled the entire thing with grease. You can see the grease is starting to push out the top here. When you get it pushing out the top, just move it around and continue working. We'll go till we have grease coming out the top all the way around. Alright, once we have grease completely covering them, I typically go all the way around. Make sure the outsides are full. And then this space here. Now I'm going to grease that race. You do not need to pack the inside of this area with grease. Set the bearing down in there. Now, before I clean my hands up, I'm going to go ahead and pack the outer bearing, and then we'll come back and we'll do this seal. Next is the seal. You can see it's kind of got this lip here. That lip goes up in this case, or toward the inside. So we just kind of press it down in there. If you've got a seal driver that covers the whole thing, you can use that. Block of wood works pretty well. If you're using, like a soft nylon hammer or something, that actually works fairly well too. You can just tap all the way around. Just don't beat on it. In my case, I do have a seal driver, so we'll use it. You want to drive it until that outer flange of the seal is all the way down against the rotor. Before you put the rotor on, this shoulder back here, this is where that inner seal rides. So we want to lubricate this so that we don't have dry rubber running on this steel. Then we put in the outer bearing. Next up is a spindle nut. You should have two of them. One of them has a pin on it. The one with the pin goes in first, with the pin toward the outside. And you need one of these 4-point sockets to put it on. You should have one because you needed it to get it off. So now the question is, how tight should this be? You want it so that the spindle has zero play. No up, down, in or out. Kind of reef on it a little bit. Make sure it does not move. But it should not be so tight that this doesn't turn. You notice I put it in with just my hand. I didn't put a wrench on this at all. Another old school way of doing this is to put a ratchet on there and get it lined up, which is always fun. Tighten it up so it's tight, and it's going to be maybe a little difficult to turn, but get it tight. Then that makes sure that the bearings are all smashed together, everything's fully seated. Then loosen it back up, and then go hand tight. And that's in. Next goes this washer. There's a groove on top of the spindle. This little thing goes into that groove. The pin that sticks out of that nut goes into one of the holes on the washer. The important thing there is to make sure that it's all the way flat. Next we put on the next nut. This one does not have a pin on either side. So I find putting it on the socket to start with at least helps you get a hold of it. And we torque this to 60 foot-pounds. The kit came with loaded calipers. They were just bare cast iron. I did coat these, so that's why it's disassembled. The thing to be aware of is there is a left and a right caliper. When you put it on, this bleeder screw needs to be up so that you can let the air out. If you've got it on the wrong side, it'll be pointed down and you can't bleed them. You need a 3/8 hex wrench in order to get at the back. It'd be better if I had one that goes on a ratchet, but I can't find it, so we'll use this. One thing that's important that they call out in the instructions is there needs to be a gap right here of 1/8 of an inch. This caliper, while it's a stock Chevy caliper, they've machined a bunch of meat off of the back of this, but occasionally it may impact your knuckle right here. It's right by this stopper screw, so you might have to grind on either your knuckle or the caliper a little bit to give yourself some clearance there. This one went on no problem. I'm hoping the other side will go on just as well. I would always choose to grind on the knuckle, not on the caliper. You'd want to avoid grinding on the caliper because it's already been machined, and I don't know how thin the wall is into that cylinder, and if you break through into that cylinder, it just turns it into a piece of scrap. So definitely grind on the knuckle if you need to. Really the only thing left to do is to put on the hub. I've got some old ones here, but they're in tired shape, so I'm going to buy new ones to put on this. Other than putting the hub on, this is really ready to go. The kit also does come with some stainless steel brake lines, but I don't have any of the hard lines yet on this axle, so I can't really do that yet. I also obviously can't tell you how well they work because, well, this is the vehicle they're going on, so it's a long way from being able to actually brake. Overall, though, I really like this kit. Installation is really, really simple. It's using a factory Ford rotor, so if I need to get a new rotor, I can. It's using Chevy brake pads. Those are easy to come by. If I need a new caliper, chances are I can probably rebuild this one, but if I have to get a new one, I can just grind off where they ground off on theirs to replace it. So all of this is standard replacement stuff. I think putting this onto a vehicle in the, from tearing apart all the way back together, you could probably do it in half a day without any problem. So, yeah, I would definitely recommend this. That's all there is to it for today. Thanks for watching.